Welcome back to the Jazz Pursuit. In this video, we're going to learn and analyse the beautiful ballad Polkadots and Moonbeams. Polkadots and Moonbeams was written by Jimmy Van Heusen in 1940. Most standards start out life either in a film or on the stage. However, this wasn't the case here. Instead, it was penned specifically for the Tommy Dorsey Band and was the first hit for a little-known singer of the time, Frank Sinatra. Alongside the original recording, some other notable versions worth checking out are by Wes Montgomery, Bill Evans, Chet Baker and Sarah Vaughan. Below, I've attached a PDF handout that accompanies the video and includes the full analysis, lead sheet and piano sheet music of our arrangements. Right, let's get started. So, first off, let's take a look at the key bits of information. Polkadots and Moonbeams is in 4/4 time, but the key is up for debate. The original Tommy Dorsey version is in D and E flat major. Bill Evans played it in F major, and Wes Montgomery in G major. In this video, we're going to learn it in G major. The form is 32 bars, organised into an A-A-B-A structure, where each section lasts for 8 bars. First, there's the A section, which is then repeated. This is followed by the B section, before ending with the final A section. So that's the key bits of information. Now let's dive in and take a look at the A section harmony. The A section harmony begins with a common progression, a 1-6-2-5-1. And all the chords are built using the notes of the home key scale. Chord 1 is G major 7. Chord 6 is E minor 7. Chord 2 is A minor 7. Chord 5 is D7, which resolves to chord 1, G major 7. Next, the harmony sets off through another 1-6-2-5-1. So, from chord 1, G major 7, it moves to chord 6, E minor 7, and then chord 2, A minor 7. But then the harmony changes. Rather than finishing off the progression and resolving back to chord 1, there's a change of target. The new target is chord 6, the relative minor, E minor 7. And the harmony gets there through a 5-1 cadence. As E minor is the 1 chord and target point, this means B7 is the 5 chord. Let's hear the harmony up to this point. And now for the second half of the A section. From the relative minor, E minor 7, the harmony moves to chord 4 as a minor chord, C minor 7. And then the harmony resolves home to chord 1, G major 7. The A section ends with a 2-5-1 cadence back to chord 1. Chord 2 is A minor 7, chord 5 is D7, and chord 1 is G major 7. So that's the foundations of the A section harmony. Now let's hear it on the piano. Before we look at the melody, there's one last bit of harmony to drop in, and this comes in bar 6. In here, there's a chromatic approach to the 2 chord A minor 7 in bar 7. The harmony starts on chord 3, B minor 7, then falls a semitone to B flat minor 7, which falls another semitone to chord 2 A minor 7. The reason for the chromatic approach will become clear when we look at the melody, but first let's hear the A section with these added chords. There's some extra chords and sneaky bass movements that we can add to the A section, but we'll tackle these later. For now, let's take a look at the A section melody. The A section melody stays entirely within the home key scale, G major, bar 1 note. Phrase 1 begins by walking up through the home key scale, from the 5th D to the 3rd B. Then, it jumps to the 5th D, before landing back on the 3rd B. The phrase then ends by walking down through the scale to the 6th E. Whilst the phrase uses only the notes of the home key scale, it also outlines the changes. In relation to the chords, the phrase begins by walking up from the 5th to the 7th of the G major 7 chord, before outlining the 3rd, 4th, 5th and 7th of the E minor 7 chord. Next, it lands on the 9th of the A minor 7 chord and walks down to the 7th, before ending by outlining the 3rd and 2nd of the D7 chord. Phrase 2 is a development of phrase 1. Let's first analyse it in relation to the home key. It begins the same way, by rising from the 5th D to the 3rd B. Before jumping up to the 5th D. In phrase 1, the melody then fell back to the 3rd. But here, the phrase has been stretched and instead rises to the 6th E. Phrase 2 ends by walking down through the scale to the 2nd A. And now let's look at it in relation to the chords. It begins by walking up from the 5th to the 7th of the G major 7 chord, before rising up through the 3rd, 4th, 5th and 7th of the E minor 7 chord. Then it lands on the 5th of the A minor 7 chord and walks down to the 3rd. The phrase ends by outlining the root and 7th of the B7 chord. At this point, we've had two 2-bar phrases. Next, this melodic structure is broken up with 2 shorter 1-bar phrases. These phrases really outline the harmony, so it's easiest to analyse them in relation to the chords. Phrase 3 simply alternates the 3rd and 4th of the E minor 7 chord, G and A. And then the G becomes the 5th of the C minor 7 chord. Phrase 4 begins on the third of the G major 7 chord, B, before walking down through the scale to the root G. Next, the melody falls chromatically, hanging on the 5th of each chord. It falls from the 5th of the B minor 7 chord F sharp to the 5th of the B flat minor 7 chord F to the 5th of the A minor 7 chord E. This E is the starting point of phrase 5, but I wanted to add it here so you can see this chromatic movement in both the melody and the harmony. At this point, the A section splits into two different endings. The first time ending takes us back to the top, ready for the second A section. And the second time ending marks the end of the section, before moving on to the B. Phrase 5 in the first time ending is so clear it almost feels like a bebop lick. It begins by outlining the chord tones of the A minor 7 chord. From the 5th E, it rises to the 3rd C, before falling to the root A and 7th G. Next, it lands on the 3rd of the D7 chord, F sharp. The phrase then jumps up to the 9th E, which resolves down a tone to the 5th of the G major 7 chord, D. Currently, the harmony isn't helping with the resolution back to the top, as it just sits on chord 1, G major 7. So, to create some momentum into the second A section, we can drop in a 3-6-2-5, which resolves to chord 1 in bar 1 of the second A section. Chord 3 is B minor 7. Chord 6 is E minor 7. Chord 2 is A minor 7. And chord 5 is D7. So that's the first A section. Now let's hear it on the piano. And now for the second time ending. Phrase 5 here is almost identical to the first time ending, with the only difference being the last two notes. The phrase begins by outlining the chord tones of the A minor 7 chord, rising from the 5th E to the 3rd C, and then falling to the root A and 7th G. Next, the phrase resolves to the 3rd of the D7 chord, F sharp. In the first time ending, the phrase now opened up, soaring to the 9th E. But here, the melody instead shuts down, solidifying the home key and marking the end of the section. The melody falls from the 3rd of the G major 7 chord, B, to the root G. Now let's hear the second A on the piano. So that's the A section covered. Next up is the B section. Let's start with the harmony. The B section is in B major, and as this is the case, we're going to temporarily make B major chord 1, so we can see exactly what's happening. The harmony begins on chord 1, B major 7, which is quite a gear change from G major. So, to help smooth this transition, we can add a 5/1 cadence to the second time ending of the A section. As B major 7 is the 1 and target point, this means F sharp 7 is the 5 chord. So, there's good news and bad news. The bad news is that we're in B major, which isn't too friendly. However, the good news is that the harmony doesn't move around too much. It begins with the same harmonic movement that started the A section, a 1-6-2-5. Now, chord 1 is B major 7, chord 6 is G sharp minor 7, chord 2 is C sharp minor 7, and chord 5 is F sharp 7. Next, the harmony reinforces the new key, and repeats this same 1-6-2-5 twice more. B major 7 to G sharp minor 7 to C sharp minor 7 to F sharp 7. So that's 3/4 of the B section harmony done, and 3 times through the 1-6-2-5. Let's hear it before we tackle the last 2 bars. Up to this point, the B section has done an excellent job of establishing the new key. However, now it needs to get back to G major, ready for the final A section. This happens through a subtle change of chord quality. The harmony starts on chord 1, but rather than being B major 7, it's tweaked to a dominant, B7. This B7 then kickstarts a chain of 5/1 cadences. B7 as a 5 chord resolves down a fifth to E. But rather than being E major 7, this E chord is also tweaked to a dominant, E7. This E7 chord is then the 5 chord in another 5/1 cadence. E7 resolves down a fifth to A. And this A chord is A minor 7, and chord 2 of the home key G major. From here, the harmony moves through a 2-5-1 cadence to get back home. A minor 7 is chord 2, D7 is chord 5, and G major 7 is chord 1. Another way that we can look at the last 2 bars of the B section is in relation to G major, rather than B major. In this case, we can just think of the movement as a 3-6-2-5, where both the 3 chord and the 6 chord have been tweaked to dominance. With these things, it really doesn't matter which way you think about it, just pick the method that makes most sense to you. So that's the B section harmony. Now let's take a look at the melody. The B section melody consists of 4 phrases, and like the A section, these phrases use predominantly the notes of the home key scale, now B major, while still outlining the chords. Phrase 1 begins with a pickup, alternating the 5th and 6th of the B major 7 chord, F sharp and G sharp, before jumping up to the 3rd D sharp. I think of this part of the phrase as the question, and the next part as the answer. Next, the phrase falls chromatically from the 7th of the G sharp minor 7 chord F sharp to the 3rd of the C sharp minor 7 chord E. Then, the phrase walks down through C sharp Dorian to the 7th B. The phrase ends by falling from the 3rd of the F sharp 7 chord A sharp to the root F sharp. This first phrase is quite long, and it's contrasted by a shorter second phrase. Phrase 2 begins by rising from the 5th to the 6th of the B major 7 chord, F sharp to G sharp. This G sharp then becomes the root of the G sharp minor 7 chord, before rising to the 2nd A sharp. The phrase ends by rising through the chord tones, from the 3rd B to the 5th D sharp to the 7th F sharp, which is now the 4th of the C sharp minor 7 chord. To build familiarity through the section, Jimmy Van Heusen uses one of the oldest tricks in the book. Phrase 3 is a direct repeat of phrase 1. The phrase begins with the question, alternating the 5th and 6th of the B major 7 chord, F sharp and G sharp, before jumping up to the 3rd D sharp. Then, the answer. The melody falls chromatically from the 7th of the G sharp minor 7 chord F sharp to the 3rd of the C sharp minor 7 chord E. Then, the phrase walks down through C sharp Dorian to the 7th B. The phrase ends by falling from the 3rd to the root of the F sharp 7 chord, A sharp to F sharp. Phrase 4 is again a shorter phrase, and here the harmony needs as much help as possible to smooth the transition back to G major. This happens through alternating 2 pairs of notes. Phrase 4 begins by alternating the root and 2nd of the B7 chord, B and C sharp. Then, the melody implies the modulation, by alternating the 3rd and 4th of the A minor 7 chord, C and D. The phrase ends by landing on the 5th of the D7 chord, A. So that's the B section, and next in the form is the final A section. This is identical to the earlier A sections, and the ending is pinched from the second A. Before we finish, there are 3 places where we can add some extra chords or crafty bass movements. Let's start with the A section. First up is bar 4. In here we can drop in a Green Dolphin Street. This is a block of harmony made famous by the standard On Green Dolphin Street, where the bass does all the work. From A minor 7, the bass falls to the 7th G, making the chord A minor 7 over its 7th G. Then, the bass note falls another semitone to F sharp. If we look at A minor 7 over F sharp, we can see that this is F sharp half diminished in disguise. Back to the progression, this F sharp half diminished then becomes the 2 in a 2-5-1. Chord 2 is F sharp half diminished. Chord 5 is B7, which resolves to chord 1 of the cadence, E minor 7. Let's hear this one in context. Sneaky bass movement number 2 comes in bars 5 and 6. Here, from E minor 7, the bass can fall a semitone to E flat, which is the third of the C minor 7 chord, making the chord C minor 7 over its third E flat. Next, if the bass falls another semitone, it lands on D, which is the fifth of the G major 7 chord, making the chord G major 7 over its fifth D. This bass movement works well as it avoids landing on the root of chord 1, instead delaying it until the end of the section. Let's hear it in context. The third place for some different chords is in the B section, and this can be dropped in either bar 1 or bar 5. To break up the 1-6-2-5 progressions, we can add a passing diminished chord to create some contrast. So, between chord 1 B major 7 and chord 2 C sharp minor 7 is C. So C diminished 7 is the chromatic passing chord that joins these two chords together. Let's hear it in context. So that's Polkadots and Moonbeams. I hope you've enjoyed the video and found it helpful. For all the lesson notes, a lead sheet, and the piano sheet music of our arrangements, do check out the PDF handout attached below.